In this video, I'd like to demonstrate the technique of conditional formatting. Now, this type of formatting that I'm going to do is visualization, but it's a category of visualization that is directed at the individual cells as opposed to some of the other types of visualization we do that summarizes things. So for example, if we have a pie chart, or if we have a histogram or a bar chart, oftentimes that type of visualization can sum up it will sum up potentially millions of records. And in this case, where we're doing this conditional formatting, we're more likely trying to understand individual data points. But as you can see on this particular sheet that I have right here, the data points can somewhat blur together. When you look at what's the difference between 13805 versus 13.74, you'd have a hard time at a glance identifying meaningful deviations from whatever the most common numbers are in the data set. So I have three different columns here that should be identical, and I'll just show on this page some very common manipulations. So the question that this starts off with is global warming happening? So I believe these are degrees in Celsius from 1881 through 2011. And instead of just looking at the raw numbers, we can use some visualization techniques. So I will select this column of data. I will say conditional formatting. And the first thing I'm actually going to do here says number 1, find the top 20 items in column F. So I'll do top bottom rules, top 10 items, and I'll change that to 20. I'll leave it as the default color, which is red. And what it'll do then is it'll highlight the top 20 items in the list. And we can see quickly and easily here that the top 20 items are more recent. So that gives some evidence in favor of this question about whether global warming is happening. Now in the second column, I'll do a different type of highlighting. This one says find the top and bottom 10% in column G. So I'll highlight that. And what we would expect to find is that the top items will be towards the end of the list. And then if I do this, I can do this a second time on the exact same block of data, except I'm going to pick a different color for the low values. So the bottom 10% is now highlighted in green, and the top 10% is highlighted in red. And so we can see that it used to be a lot cooler, and that now it's warmer. And now it says find the above and below average. So we're now going to account for everything here by doing the following: conditional formatting. We're going to do everything above the average in this list. We'll color that red, and then everything that's below average, we'll color that in, this time I'll make it yellow. And as I go through this list, I can see that there are some hotter than average temperatures in perhaps the bottom half of the list, but there's definitely a trend occurring overall in that most of the low temperatures, half the data set is yellow, and it's at the beginning, and the other half, most of the hot temperatures tend to be in the second portion. Okay, so that's one version of some of the highlighting things that you can do. Another thing, there's definitely some other things that we can do. Right here I have listed that I want to attempt to highlight any of the duplicates that are in a list. So with that, I will highlight the list of names there. I'll go conditional formatting, highlight cell rules, and I want to highlight duplicate values. So there are 2 Johns and 2 Joshes. This one says find text containing Eric and fill that with red text. So I'm going to go conditional formatting, highlight cell rules, text that contains, and I will type in the name Eric and click OK. Notice that it matched Eric and Erica because both of those names match ERIC. We can also highlight cells based on dates. So I'll go conditional formatting, highlight cell rules based on the date occurring, and we'll do the last 7 days in red, and then we can layer on another formatting rule that's actually going to take precedence over the other one of the other rule that we just put there. And so I'll say a date occurring yesterday. I'll make that green and click OK. Now you might be curious if you come onto a spreadsheet after the fact, what are the rules that exist in a particular column of data or a range of data, and you can see that by going under conditional formatting, manage rules, and based on what we just did, we can deduce that whatever shows up at the top of the list is taking precedent and was most recently created. So you can layer on a whole bunch of rules, but the precedence will go to the one that you did most recently, which is going to be on top. You can also edit the rules that are there. Another type of visualization that we can do is we can add data bars. And data bars are a way of, instead of just having a number, we can visualize how big a data is with respect to the other data in the list. So if I highlight this and say conditional formatting data bars, and I just pick the first one, we have this short bar that represents 1, and we have 21, which represents the biggest value. Now if I were to change the size of this column, it's going to expand to keep the proportion of the number the same. We can, if we need to, we can get away from this default behavior. For example, we can say that the smallest bar begins at 3 and the largest bars max out for anything over 8. So I'll demonstrate that and say data bars, more rules, and I'll say that the minimum number is going to be 3 and that the max number for the bar length is going to be 8. And if I click OK, it works out basically like we planned it to, that anything 8 and bigger is as big as it can possibly be. And then we can look at some trends as well by doing the bottom 20%, top 20%, and bottom 20th percentile, top or 80th percentile, and 20th percentile. So conditional formatting, data bars, more rules. This is just going to be similar to what we just did. I'll change these options to percent, and we'll say the bottom 20%, and actually this should probably be 80%. So that's how that plays out. And then with this one, we're going to do almost the exact same thing and do percentile.